Welcome to hour 3 of the Multiverse Fundraiser. I have Will Schuyler riding shotgun with me again, and we have comics great Leah Williams. Welcome, Leah.
Hello, hello. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for not thinking I was weird when I befriended you at Uncanny Experience and wouldn't stop talking your
Oh my
ear off.
God. No, it was amazing. We should tell the story of how we met at Uncanny,
Yes,
actually, because
please.
it's what led to this. I was tabling at the Uncanny Experience, and you came up. And we started talking about like Harley and Gotham City Sirens, and also the fact that we're both into Pokemon, because I think I was wearing a Pokemon dress that day.
Yes.
And you just happened to have some amazing work in Pokemon art, so I thought that was fantastic.
Yeah, that's my cosplay partner Crayley does all that Pokemon, the Pokeballs, and
Yeah,
yeah, we were like, this is someone who we have to be friends with because
yeah,
you look gorgeous in
absolutely.
that dress.
Oh, thank you, you're so kind.
And we were just like, also, you write like all our favorite characters. And I was telling you about how I had shown Crayley, my cosplay partner, your cover earlier, like months ago, because Crayley always likes to do cowgirl variants of characters, and you wrote a whole series of the Gotham City Sirens being cowgirls, which is amazing.
I did as a Western. And I think that's on our list of questions to get to. So I won't go into it too much now, but when Crayley showed me those pictures and you brought it up, I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. Yes, exactly. You guys get me.
Kindred
I'm
spirits.
definitely going to have to look that up for future cosplay.
Oh, you should. It was so funny because Crayley did her own version of Cowgirl Harley, and then that came across my feed. I was like, okay, yes, this writer's in her head. I love it. And then we get to be friends. So, and then Crayley has assigned one of those covers now, thanks to you,
Yay.
Leah,
So
which
glad.
so happy. And so, but the first question is, how did you get into writing?
It has always been an interest for me, even when I was a child. If you locked me alone in a room for the rest of my life, I would still write. I would write in a vacuum. I would write with no audience. But I only started to pursue it professionally in my early 20s. I'm in my 30s now. And I started writing fan fiction, actually, is I think
Yes.
where I credit getting my official or like official first start in writing. It's fan fiction, and I was blogging a lot on Tumblr about comics, specifically X-Men comics, because at the time I was working at a comic book shop, and so I was just reading comics all day every day and then logging onto Tumblr and talking about it. And over time kind of found community online with other X-Men fans and other people just living their life too. Tumblr is like that, Tumblr is like
Love Tumblr.
the passion platform. Yeah, I do too. I've got a real soft spot in my heart for Tumblr. And then I ended up writing an article for The Atlantic about how Hollywood whitewashed stories of the Old West. So I'm big into cowboy culture. I'm in Texas, and cowboy culture is almost entirely, of Latino invention. And so, talking about the history of cowboy culture and how most like Hollywood Westerns were kind of borrowed narratives from freed slaves or Latino men or Native men. I think that's important to talk about. So I'm like really passionate about Westerns and cowboy culture. And of course, that's the experience that I drew from when I writing Gotham City Sirens. You know, I was like, what if it was a Western? What if it was a crazy Western with these gals?
I love
And
that.
it was actually that article that got me scouted for Marvel.
Oh,
And I've been writing comics ever since. So I was 23 when that happened. And, you know, it's been 8 years. Yeah. And yeah, never looked back. It's been amazing.
That's wild. I love that they scouted you from you recognizing basically an imbalance in media. That's fantastic.
And it's something too where like it was luck, really. It was luck that this editor happened to see this article and not only like read it, but also look at the byline, see my name, and think, hey, I remember this girl from when she was blogging about comics on Tumblr. So he remembered me from that, from like writing about comics a few years prior. And you know, that plus this article is why he reached out to me. So shout out Chris Robinson for literally changing my life overnight with an email.
That's fantastic. And then Hollis Thompson, who's one of our team members, said becoming a published author of any kind at 23 is very impressive. And The Atlantic is an impressive publication. So, you know what? Kudos to you. Like,
Thank you. Thank you. It actually took me many years to get it published because it was hard to find a home for that kind of story. But,
mhm.
you know, I tend to write about my passions. And I'm passionate about comics, so that's pretty sustaining. But like cowboy culture is another big thing for me. And a lot of other places were just like, you know, no thanks. This is kind of a bummer of a story. And I'm like, what? It's awesome. Are you kidding me? So thank you, Hollis. I really appreciate it. It took so much work to get that story told.
I
And I'm
believe it.
glad that it exists. It's still something I use as a resource whenever, you know, Beyonce drops a country album or something like that. And then all of this discussion kicks up about who has the right to be wearing cowboy hats and cowboy boots. And that's always when I, you know, pull this article back out and I'm like, actually, pushes glasses up nose.
I love that so much. Crayley Vaness said she's read that dime novels really contributed to misinformation about cowboy culture, but then also motivated people to learn the real stuff later. Is that your experience too?
I think it's an accurate assessment. I wouldn't go so far as to say that it had the same sort of negative impact that Hollywood Westerns had
Mm.
specifically. I think, you know, dime novels, pulp novels in general aren't the ones necessarily establishing the narrative for most people. I think it's more of like a fringe culture with that versus like the Hollywood machine telling everybody, you know, this is what a cowboy looks like while using the story of a black man.
That makes sense. Movies reach a lot more people, and the
They do.
imagery is really powerful.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
yeah. Like my husband actually introduced me to a lot of the spaghetti western stuff, and like
Love
him and
spaghetti
his family, and I
westerns. Yes.
and to make us superheroes. I didn't even actually think about making it a superhero storyline of with spaghetti with a western, and I, now that you have done it, it's like now I have to read
It's
it.
not something that I would pitch for, you know, every hero that I write, but it
Yeah.
is something that I felt appropriate in, you know, this one particular case because one of the things that my editor brought up in the beginning was like I want this book since it's only going to be like 4 issues. I want it to feel cinematic. I want it to feel important and like a movie. And I had just wrapped up working on Exterminators for Marvel, which is like Grindhouse and also
Mhm.
something I just really love writing. So I was like, what if I took all my favorite stuff like Westerns and Grindhouse? Because I think the mix of that really works for Gotham City Sirens in particular. I wouldn't do that with everything. But in this context, I was like, this could work. This could.
Yeah, awesome. Are you I know that westerns have a tendency to go to become like steampunk inspired as well. Is that a world that you're looking to get into as well in the future?
Not so much steampunk, but I am keenly interested in gas lamp fantasy.
Oh.
And I do have a pitch that I've been working on for my own like original comic idea. It's something that I first conceptualized in 2016, when the first time that Donald became president. And it's come back to my mind now because I'm remembering those feelings and what inspired the story to begin with. So I'm like, I'm gonna pick this up again because this feels like it's really resonating with me right now. So I might as well work on that.
Okay.
And Gaslamp fantasy is I think it's an emerging genre right now. I think there's about to be like a whole bunch of Gaslamp fantasy, probably, hopefully, including my own.
Okay, awesome.
And so, what do you like about writing superheroes specifically?
I think that it's a really strong opportunity for me to make people feel happy and safe. I feel pretty empowered when I'm reading superhero comics, because when superhero comics hit, they hit, and especially stuff where, if it's like X-Men, which really connects with, marginalized communities and anybody who's ever felt othered, and, it feels empowering and, pretty potent and powerful to read something like that. So being able to contribute to something that I already love is like a responsibility I take really seriously. If we're being honest, I think of us writing superhero comics as kind of torch bearers, like, especially if I'm coming to a character that has a really established existing audience. I want to respect that audience. I want to read the room. I want to know what it is about this character in particular that people are connecting to, because it's important to continue that thread in building up a character mythos.
I love that answer. That's perfect answer. And go ahead, Bella.
No, you go ahead.
Okay. So you already did touch on why you set Gotham City Sirens in as a Western, but so what was the process like pitching that? And you kind of talked about how you tied your own background into it, but let's talk about that a little more because it's so fun.
Sure, absolutely. So, as I mentioned, when my editor first approached me about Gotham City Sirens, it was like, okay, we're going to do this sort of special event with it where, 4 issues, one of them is going to be oversized. So like I'm interested in it feeling like a movie, like something really cinematic. And I have kind of always had that story in my head of what happens in Gotham City Sirens. I have always thought about it in terms of something that Harley could do in particular, because what she's reacting to is an exotic game ranch importing in like endangered and exotic animals for rich people to hunt. And that's legal. People can actually do that. There are ranches like this in, Montana that I've come across. And it just makes me, I'm not trying to like shame anybody who hunts or anything like that, but the idea of importing an exotic animal from another country just for it to be shot on our soil does make me very sad. Because it's not even for meat or anything like that. It's for the pleasure of shooting something. But it's legal, so there's like no recourse for me. However, when has the law ever stopped Harley from doing whatever she wants? You know what I mean? So that's why I have wanted to tell this story with Harley in particular for a long time. And then, you know, it was the phrase like, make it feel like a movie, make it feel cinematic, that made me think, oh, this could be one project. It could be like a Western using this kind of exotic game ranch location that I've had in the back of my head for a really long time.
Oh, I love that.
And I think it makes sense when you think about like outlaw culture too. And, you know, they're not always on the side of the law, but it doesn't mean that they're not doing something completely justified.
That's why I always root for Poison Ivy. Like, Poison Ivy's always right, even when she's wrong.
Yeah, you know, it's
100%.
funny that, like a lot of my cosplays are like villains or anti-villains, and I'm just like, like I love reading the stories of the heroes, but for some reason, you know, cosplaying as a villain is so much better.
And Curly Vanessa just said, in my mind, anti-hero culture and cowboy culture are highly connected. It's why I like to cosplay Emma Frost or Harley as a cowgirl.
Yeah, exactly.
Curly's cowgirl Emma Frost costume is amazing. There was like one panel where Emma was a cowgirl that I had to send to her. I was like, yep, this is up your alley. You need to make this happen. And as Hollis Thompson says, Westerns are definitely a part of the prehistory of superheroes, especially the Virginian.
Yeah, the folk hero is a really important like American tradition, I would say. We've always had these kind of folk heroes cropping up throughout our culture, whether they're fictional or not.
Mm-hmm. When did you start getting into the comic book thing? Like, what was your first comic book?
So I didn't grow up with comics. I grew up in Mississippi and just didn't have access to comic books until I was in college. And I was rooming with this girl named Sandy Pletikosic, and she had a lot of comics. Like when we moved in together, she brought like just boxes and boxes of hardcovers and trade paperbacks. And you know, like I was really ignorant at the time. So when I saw her and all her comics, I was like, I thought comics were for boys. And like I associated superhero stuff with boys. I thought that, you know, there was no room for women in comics whatsoever. And so Sandy, like, we were hanging out in my room at the time, and she gets up, wordlessly walks out of my room, goes over to her shelf in her bedroom, comes back and dunks a copy of Watchmen down on my desk and then leaves. And this is my first official introduction to comics. It was Watchmen. And I wouldn't normally like introduce someone to comics via Watchmen, but you have to understand, for Sandy, it was her single most effective argument for why everything I thought I knew about comics was completely wrong. And she was right. Like, speaking of people who changed the trajectory of my life, Sandy is, you know, at the top of this list too, because she introduced me to comics, and we're still, you know, besties to this day. So I have to credit her all the time.
Talk about not having like the easy way in.
I know, that is a dense book.
Yeah. But I remember,
I thought you were gonna say she gave you like Wonder Woman.
No, it went Watchmen, and I remember it so specifically because it was summer at the time. So I was just like sunning myself on the roof of our like Brooklyn complex, and then texting her while she was inside downstairs, just like live texting her my reactions, like, what the hell, man, this is insane. And she's like, I know. So it started with Watchmen, and then it was Birds of Prey, Gail Simone's Birds of Prey specifically. And then it was Gotham City Sirens. It was OG Gotham City Sirens. And then I started working in a comic book shop, and that's when, like, you know, really blew the lid off everything that I had read previously, because I had access to everything at that point.
Fantastic. That's my dream job, but also I would be so broke because I would bring all the comics home.
It
My
was a
husband would never
problem.
let.
Yeah. It was a problem.
Yeah, I walked into one of the local stores, one of the new ones, and I turned around. I'm like, "Oh no," because my husband was with me, and he's a huge Star Wars fan, and I'm just like, "Oh no!" And there was like a Millennium Falcon from like the '80s, like
Yeah.
we left with like that and a bunch of other stuff. I think we spent like $200 at the store.
Oh my
Oh
God. Yeah.
no.
Yeah.
That's yeah. Those are rookie
Way too
numbers. You gotta
easy.
bump them up.
No, yeah, no, it's but yeah, I saw the GI Joe stuff too. I'm just like, oh no, we're not gonna leave.
Yeah.
All my favorite characters have books out right now. It is an embarrassment of riches. Like Black Canary is my favorite, and she has an amazing book out right now. Shout out to
She
Tom
does.
King. Oh my gosh. And then Zatanna's got a book out. Like,
Hmm.
I am happy, but also broke.
I am so far behind on my comic book reading, and every so often I'll go into a store and I'll look at the newer rack, but then I'm always looking at like the back issues, and it's like, oh, I need this one, I need this one.
I still got so much to catch up on because I'm never caught up. But so
No.
Crayley Vanessa did say it feels nice to see comic writers she really admires who didn't grow up with comics. Helps my own imposter syndrome because you know what? Like a lot of us girls didn't grow up with comics.
That's exactly why I talk about it. And I'm really upfront about not growing up with comics because I didn't, and this is my chosen medium. It's a passion, and I think that we are just as valid as people who did grow up with comics.
Agreed. Also,
George
you're
Bueller. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
oh sorry, you're inspiring Aubrey Cavett to do Western Showgirl Ivy, so you're inspiring
That sounds
cosplayers.
amazing.
Aw, George Bueller just oh, go ahead, Will. You read it. I should save my voice.
Okay. George Bueller says, I just sold a customer several of Lee's Power Girl books today. Someone was catching up.
Oh, that's amazing. I'm so happy to hear that. Power Girl is one of the biggest joys of my life. I have had such a blast on that book. It's so fun.
I have been cosplaying her for a couple of years now, and I just recently got this bodysuit. And it's like, at first, I'm like, I had the bodysuit where it didn't have the keyhole, and people still recognized it, and I was a little afraid to get it. But then I'm just like, no, let's do it. Let's do her properly.
Gotta have the window. So, what's your favorite thing about writing Power Girl?
Oh, that's a good question. I think the behind the scenes process. I know that's a really big answer and there's a lot that goes into that. But when I think about the joy of writing Power Girl, the first thing that comes to mind are my collaborators. I like my editors and the artists and our letterer. And it's just been one of the most wonderful creative collaborations that I've ever had the privilege of being a part of. It feels like, everybody is making the same book. We all have the same version of this book in our head. So there's no, opinions that are misaligned or anything like that. No miscommunication. So it's just been what I call like a really healthy and holistic process. Like it's natural. It's not something that, we could have anticipated, but it comes naturally to us now. And I just really, really treasure my collaborators. I think they're fantastic people. Brilliant people.
Good to hear. I've heard horror stories about behind the scenes stuff, and I'm so happy you had that experience.
I've heard horror stories too, so I'm really happy about this experience as well. I am fully aware of how lucky I am, how fortunate. So I always want to like shout out my editors and my collaborators because they're good to me. They treat me well.
Okay. Like I know the comic book industry can be like a big boys club. How have you managed to navigate through that?
I think what really helped me is that I went to film school where I was one of the only girls. I think I was the only girl in my graduating class in my particular major. And I, was really accustomed to being the only girl on film sets or at work and in classes. So it is something that I just kind of like, developed a mental filter for at some point. But funnily enough, the way that I met Sandy Pletikosic, the woman who went on to introduce me to comics entirely, was in a screenwriting class. So
Oh,
we're the only like two girls in this screenwriting class and banded together immediately because of solidarity. But I also recognized like, oh, she's amazing. Like I need her in my life forever. And uh, it's not something I can say is the case for me now in comics, because I do work with a lot of women. I work with a lot of non-binary people. And it's definitely not just men. And I like that. I like that I work with a bunch of different people. I like that I don't have to, you know, worry about how me being a woman could potentially make somebody act weird around me, because it hasn't. And I'm super lucky for that too.
are you finding that the guys are supportive in what you're doing as well? More
Oh,
so
absolutely.
than being a
And
negative?
yeah, well, when I refer to the guys, what I'm thinking of specifically are like my Krakoan collaborators. That's kind of my like basis point when I'm talking about this stuff, because I did work with a lot of men, but I also worked with Vita and Ayala and Teenie Howard, who not men, and are my best friends now. This is how we met and became close, and now they're like extensions of my soul. Like they are a part of me. That's how much I adore them. But the dynamic between us and our male collaborators was also very like holistic and healthy and normal. And Jonathan Hickman was our like head of X. He was kind of our leader in what we were doing, and we worked with Jordan D. White as our editor. And we're talking about like a writer's room with Jerry Duggan and Zeb Wells and Cy Spurrier, Kieran Gillen, Al Ewing. And it is my distinct pleasure to go on the record saying that they're angels and they are the funniest people, you will ever meet in your life. And I adore them. They're fantastic collaborators and just brilliant, absolutely brilliant.
I love that because they're all so talented. So I love
Yeah.
to.
They are. Yeah. I was worried too. I was so worried going into that room with them for the first time and being like, these are my heroes. What if they're assholes? But they're not. And like, even Hickman is so funny and such a sweetie pie. And I cannot stop talking about it. They're fantastic.
Well, I Comic-Con recently, I turned around the corner and Michael Golden was there, and I'm just like, like all
That's
my
why
like the girl, I couldn't control it. I had to like girl nerd all over him. I'm just like, I'm so sorry.
I do that too. When I first started working with Jordan D. White at Marvel and first started writing X-Men comics, those are the kinds of emails Jordan would get from me. Just like, I'm so excited. I cannot stop talking about this. And when I tell you the only reason people still work with me today is because of Jordan's patience in dealing with my like fangirlishness and typing paragraphs to him, I'm not exaggerating. I feel like if I had started out with somebody less patient, then I would have stopped getting more gigs.
oh, I'm sure you were lovely, and also people like hearing how amazing they are. Just gotta say that.
I mean, I 6 paragraphs about Emma Frost is in a single email. That's just, you know,
You can never say too
exercise
much about Emma
caution.
Frost.
Well, I can't. Yeah.
Hollis Thompson asks, if you were to meet someone now who doesn't know anything about comics and maybe have even had people discourage them from reading them, what would you suggest I start with?
The way that I approach this is I first ask what somebody's favorite movie is and why it's their favorite movie, because, you know, comics, like any medium, is extremely broad. There are different genres, there are different tastes, there are different approaches. And I wouldn't like, you know, I like recommending stuff that I think people will genuinely like. So I would try and take a temperature first. You know, like if you liked Death Proof, I would recommend Exterminators to you. If you like hopeful super family stuff, then I would recommend Power Girl, that kind of thing. But if you like British humor, like irreverent, dry stuff, I would recommend the original Excalibur by Chris Claremont and Alan Davis, which is like my all-time favorite comic. This is what I read working at the comic book shop that like I could feel the change come over me. Like, oh, I'm obsessed now. I am really obsessed with not just comics, but X-Men comics in particular. So, you know, that's my evergreen recommendation because it was really accessible to me as a new reader. And, you know, introduced me to characters like Brian and Megan that I was unfamiliar with before.
George Bueller has a question. Do you have a dream character to do a series or a mini-series for?
That's a good question. I'm not going to say anything that I'm like kind of currently tossing around pitches for, because that is something I hope will actually happen. But I think that I would really love to write Emma Frost again someday and do like a really in-depth, you know, almost biographical lens of Emma Frost. I think that she's just so interesting and so full of depth and complexity. And, you know, she's just like this goddess that I worship. So I would love to write Emma Frost again.
We would love to see that.
Yes.
Obviously. And just since we're at the halfway mark, just to remind people you're watching the Multiverse fundraiser, you can donate at our Facebook page, the Multiverse fundraiser. We're raising money for Comicbooks for Kids. They provide comics to children in hospitals and cancer care centers, comics and all sorts of other comfort items. So it's a really great cause. So that's my quick pitch. Crilly is a huge Emma Frost fan. She's cosplayed so many versions. She would love for Leah to write something that filled in more of the gaps from the Emma Frost Ultimate Collection. So, yeah, Leah, I think you need to make this happen.
I would love to. I don't know if you can hear me.
Yeah.
It looks like my camera
You
froze.
just froze.
Okay.
Yeah.
As long as you can hear me.
I was just wondering, what is it like? Do you do extensive research into the characters that you write for?
I do. I do a lot of homework and a lot of research anytime I write a new character. And it's for the same reason I was talking about earlier, in that I take this very seriously, what we do as torchbearers. So I want an understanding of the character. I want to know what resonates. I want to know what are the most important aspects of their existing mythos and where there's room to build on it, to do something additive with this character, and, you know, use what's already there to push them forward with a new storyline. And I do have kind of like a formula for this, a system where I read, you know, about their first, and I'm talking like if this is somebody that I'm completely unfamiliar with and, you know, encountering for the first time because I've been asked to write them. I will read the first 3 appearances they have. I will read their 3 most popular appearances and then 3 most recent appearances. And that gives me a good overview.
Okay, that's awesome. Any chance of you working working on a Dazzler comeback?
Not that I know of, but she's already had like her big comeback. She's in Jason Lowe's hands right now, over at Marvel. And I just saw that they've got this new like Champions story with her. I think it's called Champions of the World. I don't want to get that wrong, but it's like a book about all of Marvel's famous rock stars and superhero like bands. So that's fun. That's going to be a lot of fun. I don't want to steal, Jason's thunder. He's a lovely, lovely guy.
All right. Thanks for letting me know. I definitely am out of the loop of anything new right now, so I appreciate catching me up.
Oh, no, it's fine. If I didn't already know Jason, then I wouldn't know about this because he posts about it, but I am so far behind on Marvel stuff right now, admittedly.
There's a lot to keep up with.
There is a lot, yeah.
George Bueller says, do you have a pitch for a future event series? How does a writer get to do one of those?
I don't have a pitch for a future event. It's not something that I've put a lot of thought into. And I also think it's because I'm sort of new in my comics writing career. And if you look at, events and that kind of stuff, typically they're handled by more experienced writers. I've participated in events before. The big one would be X of Swords for Hickman's X-Men. And that was a lot of fun. That was super fun. We had a blast doing that. I think the way that it works that I've seen at least is when our editors kind of see when a title or, certain group of titles could benefit from something like an event, and they reach out to a writer directly and say like, hey, how would you feel about, doing something like this? I'm sure there's different avenues to that point though, but that's what I've witnessed firsthand.
So do you have a favorite X-Men to write? I know it's like choosing a favorite child.
I know it is hard. I think Emma Frost and North Star are my big two. And there are similar qualities between them that I think kind of make them my favorite. Extremely complex characters, really like deep, rich inner lives, prickly on the outside, at times even mean and bitchy, but it's because they're guarding, this really tender heart on the inside. And, that's what informs their actions. I love writing them. I love writing Emma Frost and North Star.
When you write for these characters, do you have a certain look for them in your mind that you talk to any of the artists about, and to see if there's a way to combine the two with your vision and theirs, or do you just leave it up to the artist to do their thing?
I tend to assess these things on a case-by-case basis. I'm looking at the book as a whole and who our audience is and, what the artist comfort level is with this stuff. So the first example that comes to mind where I did have a very specific vision for the look of the characters would be Exterminators, specifically Boom Boom. Boom Boom and Exterminators has this really distinctive kind of like bimbo core kawaii look, and that was one thing that I knew I wanted going into the book. I just thought it would resonate. I thought it made sense. So when I was talking to Carlos Gomez, is the artist for Exterminators, and when I was talking to him about the kind of outfits that the characters would be wearing in the beginning when they're just like, hanging out together and that kind of thing, I had like one reference picture for Dazzler. I had 2 or 3 for Jubilee, and then I had like 20 for Boom Boom, because I knew like something in that family would be the right call. And from that, from the ref that I sent, Carlos sort of extrapolated what we have now, which is this perfect bimbo boom boom.
I love that. And I just want to give a shout out because when I shared the announcement that I would be interviewing you, one of the commenters said that you were one of the best, more recent writers to write Mary Jane.
Oh, thank
And
you.
so, yeah. And so how did you approach the Mary Jane standalone comic?
I was so excited for that. So again, that was with Carlos Gomez, and working with Carlos on Amazing Mary Jane is exactly why I requested to work with him again on Exterminators. Just because everybody was so expressive and dynamic and sexy, and I knew that was exactly what we needed for Exterminators. So shout out Carlos, he's incredible. And I was so excited to write Mary Jane because I've always seen her as somebody who is a hero, but she just doesn't have superpowers. But the choices that she makes, the way that she cares about the people around her and about Peter, she's a hero in my eyes. She's a good girl. She's sassy. She's feisty. She's from Queens. She's a fighter, And I think my favorite part of that book, what I was sort of building towards the entire time, is seeing her use her smarts, her wits to go toe to toe with bad guys, people who do have powers and can kill her. But she saw that she was the only, she was the last thing standing between them and hurting other people. And she, her reaction to that was she took off her earrings, she was ready. And I just think that's like the spirit of Mary Jane. This girl is going to take off her earrings before getting into a fight that she cannot win, just to help other people, just to save other people. She does the right thing.
I love that. I love Mary Jane too. Like, she's a great character.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, she's so fun. She's also just like, she's so sassy. She's so feisty, and also sweet, but she's spicy enough that it keeps the plot rolling. Like,
Yes.
she doesn't take shit from people. And that was just so much fun to work with.
I agree.
We have another guest for us to talk to. Another fan.
Hello.
Listen, I mean, you get anybody on there who's a phenomenal writer whose name should be an actor's name anyway. Leah Williams. And tell me that's not an actress's name, right?
Gosh.
Listen, Leah, I just wanted to say really appreciate. I had to come on to say thank you so much for taking time out of your day to be on and sharing your story with the many of us who are frustrated comic writers and only write stories in our own heads. You actually get to do it for real. So thank you for sharing that with us.
Thank you so much. And thank you for having me.
I'm done, Kelly. That's it. That's the shortest speech I've ever made.
Mark is the president of Comic Books for Kids, if you didn't get that. And so he's the reason we're all here.
Well, thank you for your incredible work. This is really important, and it's an amazing cause.
It really is. He does such good work.
Leah, you may have said this, and I apologize because I've caught bits and pieces, but are you going to be at any cons this year where all of your fans can say hello to you and anything scheduled yet?
Nothing scheduled yet, so I can't speak definitively on that, but I tend to go wherever I'm invited. I'm like a social vampire. You have to invite me in. Otherwise I don't know to go. So hopefully, because it was so nice going to the Uncanny Experience and getting to talk to readers for the first time since before the pandemic, really.
Oh
So I
wow.
would love to do more cons this year.
So cons, invite
Well,
Leah so I can stalk her.
I'm going to take that suggestion and hopefully get you up here in Canada. Hopefully, you don't mind traveling.
No, not at all. Not at all. Yeah.
Because,
Willow
yeah,
helps out with local cons.
I'm
That's
actually planning
amazing.
our sci-fi convention for for the May long weekend. Well, our May long weekend, but
Sure. That's awesome.
yeah, would love to see you at the Winnipeg Comic Con because it is a fantastic event.
Leah,
Yeah, that'd be
where's
amazing.
home? Where's home?
I'm in Texas.
Oh, that small little state down south. Yeah.
Yeah, you may have heard of it. Yeah.
Okay.
Wow, you came a long way for Minnesota then.
I did, but it was an amazing drive and I had a great time, and that's what matters.
So we mentioned Uncanny Experience a few times. For anyone at home who doesn't know what that is, it's a strictly X-Men based con. It's just an experience. It's in this amazing venue that looks like Xavier's mansion. They
So
put on a really
incredible.
good show. Oh my gosh, it's so incredible. We're actually going to have Dylan, who is one of the organizers, on an X-Men a panel about X-Men
Oh,
tomorrow.
nice. That's amazing.
Yeah, we're going to be talking about how X-Men ties is an allegory for the civil rights movement, and really just an allegory for a lot of minority experiences in
Yeah.
society.
I
And
apologize. I have to take off for a moment. I will try to be back
yep.
before the end of the show, but yeah, if I don't come back,
Willow, we look so much alike. No one's going to know.
I'm sure you guys can carry on the rest of the show.
Yep, we got it. We got it.
So you guys
Well,
have a
it's so
great
nice
evening.
meeting you, Willow.
Nice meeting you too, Leah. I appreciate what you do,
you, Willow.
and huge fan. I'll definitely read your stuff.
Oh, thank you.
Stuff
Thank you so much.
I'll have to catch up for sure. You guys have a good night.
Night, Willow. Leah, speaking of your work, are there any upcoming projects that you can tell us about? Plug your stuff.
I am working on 2 unannounced projects, so I will have 2 fun announcements that I can make soon, but not at this time. So the only thing I can talk about is Power Girl, which issue 20, I believe, is what just got announced. We just saw the cover for in solicitations. So that's always something that I appreciate people checking out because it's so much fun to write. And Power Girl is just a hot-headed sweetie pie.
I love Power Girl.
Yeah.
You've also worked your magic with the Addams Family. How fun was that?
So much fun. I worked with Jamie Rich as my editor on that. It was my first time working with Jamie. And he's so great. Amazing editor. And to work with something like Addams Family, which is huge property, and something that I did actually grow up with. Unlike comics, I grew up with the Addams Family because my parents had this big coffee table book of the collected illustrations from Chaz Addams, the originator of Addams Family.
Oh, wow.
So it was really special to work on Addams Family, work on something that I've liked since I was little. It was very cool.
I love that. So if you could invite any 5 of the characters that you've written to a dinner party, Who would you invite?
Are we talking like a subdued, kind of sophisticated grown-up dinner party, or are we talking about like chaos millennials gremlin dinner
You know what?
party?
This is up to you. Do you want chaos at your dinner party? I
Kinda,
feel like that would be
yeah.
more fun.
I think
Yeah.
so too, exactly. So, do they all have to be Marvel or DC, or can I mix?
Mix.
You can mix.
Hell
Please
yeah.
mix.
Okay. So, Jubilee and Boom Boom, first of
Oh.
all. And then I think Omen from Power Girl. And then I think Gambit. You said 5, right?
Yep.
Yeah, and then Gambit and Nightcrawler. Nightcrawler isn't as chaotic as the other 4, but he is like charismatic enough that he can sort of smooth out any tensions or anything like that. And he's also, just down for a good time. So I think that would like balance out the rest of the hooligans really nicely.
That sounds like a really fun dinner party. Can I come?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
If I were a fictional character, anyways. I absolutely love asking that question because I've never gotten a dull answer.
As you were
It's a fun
talking,
question.
Leah, I saw Nightcrawler bamfing in between various arguments, trying to smooth things out. As Gambit is
Exactly.
throwing cards at him, bubblegum is popping. I mean, the imagery was great that you came up with on that one.
Fantastic.
Thank you. Yeah. You're a writer. You get it. You see the story potential there.
100%. 100%. So, gosh, we've actually run through the question.
I try not
just
to go
looking-
on and on and on so that I can answer all the questions.
Yeah, I don't think.
Oh, you're doing good.
You're right, Leah. People shouldn't be talking a lot. I mean, that much. I mean, look at me.
I'm talking less because I'm trying to save my voice, but
Of course, yeah.
So have you
Yeah.
shared with any publishers some, I mean, you don't have to say what they are and you may not be able to, but have you shared with any publishers a wish list or saying, if you are doing any type of book like this, I know a writer who might be willing to start working on it? I mean, do you share that with them?
I haven't, but that doesn't mean that's not something you can do. I'm sure, once you've developed a good working relationship with an editor, that they
Right.
would be happy to know that kind of information. In my case, the way that it's worked out mostly is like editors asking me to write certain books or certain characters, like, hey, do you have a pitch in your pocket for such and such or something like that? We're interested in, doing a Power Girl book. Do you have any ideas for that? That kind of thing. So that's more or less what I'm used to. But Exterminators is the one book that I pitched, that I brought, and I was like, this is my blue sky thinking, pie in the sky dream book. It's a grindhouse book with X-Men characters. So that's the one example I have for that. But I don't think that, that's not to say you can't do that. You can't give an editor a wish list. It's just in my case that hasn't been.
Anytime you're writing a book where you write a panel, your mind has to go off and you're thinking about, which path you take. I can imagine you seeing a different path and thinking to yourself, oh, this page could be a story in and of itself.
Oh, totally. Yeah.
And I think you've done enough work and you have enough relationship with the editors that you shouldn't hesitate to say, hey, I was thinking about maybe a mini series or doing this, or if you think it might work, let me know, because you're talented enough and you've earned the right to make those requests back to the editors who are already asking you anyway. So
well, thank you.
Don't be afraid to ask, because you've earned the stripes. I mean, you're a professional. They're coming to you for a reason. And I think they'd appreciate you showing them that you want to stay in the family, so to speak.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much. I really, really appreciate that. I should also add, I've said many glowing things about my editors in this conversation. Another wonderful thing about the people I work with is how well they know my voice, my writing voice. So when we are talking about future stuff, it's not uncommon for my editors to be like, I think your voice would suit this character. How do you feel about that? Do you have any interest in it? And of course, because they know me well enough by now to accurately assess that, it has never not been somebody that I'm like, I would kill to write this character. Are you kidding me? So I've just really lucked out in that way. And, that alone has kept me busy enough that I haven't had a moment to stop and think about like, what is my wish list? Like what are the characters that I want to write before I die? I'll find time for that eventually.
See, Kelly, I think we already heard it. The name of the one shot is called One Night at the Mansion. And it's the dinner party, okay? Or else it's called The Dinner Party. All right.
The dinner party.
Get DC and Marvel to cooperate.
Well, the pitch would be like Knives Out, except X-Men.
Yes.
I think you got something. I mean, I think you had four of those of the five characters. Four of them were X-Men, right? Were they all five?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so there it is. You've got the X book. One Night at the Mansion. I can see it now, and I think you'd have a blast with it. But
I'd read it.
Thank you.
Also, George Bueller, he said this when we were talking about it, but he did say X of Swords was outstanding. So,
thank you.
Just
thank
so
you know,
like your work is beloved. In case you couldn't tell, George works at a comic shop, so he knows his comics.
Yeah, he mentioned people picking up Power Girl. That's amazing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, your work is very beloved. Like,
and there's some changes. There's some changes in store for Power Girl too.
Yeah. She just got a new costume,
right.
Debuting with issue 17, and it's a fun one. More skin, higher boots, and sassy. It's a fun costume.
Every time the boots get higher, just the butt kicking gets stronger.
Yeah.
So we are at the top of the hour. So where can people find you?
I am on Instagram. It's Handax with an E. And I'm also finally putting together a website, which I should have soon. Yes. And that'll have all of my contact information and comic release schedule and all of the normal stuff that I should have done years ago, but didn't. So that'll be this year. Yay.
Websites are so much work. So you know what? I feel you.
Yeah.
Thank you on behalf.
I'm lucky that Curly does that for me.
On behalf of Comic Book for Kids, our organization, thank you for taking time out of your schedule to be and share your story with us. And we're all rooting for you, if that wasn't very obvious. And we're all excited to see what you do in the future.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you for having me, and thank you for such a warm welcome and a wonderful conversation. I am so impressed by the work that you're doing in this fundraiser, and want to support it in every way that I can.
Thank you so much. You're awesome. And thank you everyone at home for tuning in, and keep watching, and have a great night.
The Multiverse Fundraiser is partnering with Comic Books for Kids to raise money for their cause. Their mission is to provide comic books to children in hospitals and cancer centers across the United States, Canada, and the UK. We believe in the importance of providing stories that promote hope and bravery to kids who are facing things that are scarier than any supervillain. And we truly believe in this cause. To donate, you can either go to our Facebook page at www.facebook.com/The Multiverse Fundraiser or directly to comicbooksforkids.org.
The Multiverse Fundraiser would like to thank our sponsors: Earth Dog Studios, Clobberin Comics, The Art of Brian Rodman, Studio Moonfall, Elusive Comics, and of course, the Phoenix Sisters Entertainment Network for hosting this event. Learn how to support these businesses on the MVFR website.